Hello, you wonderful people. So the other day I was watching the Hubert Syndrome. Michael and Kyle of Easy Allies were talking about Marvel Cinematic Universe's, Phase 4, and I believe it was Kyle who brought up something I thought was kind of interesting, because there's a whole conversation about the Eternals. Obviously they're very old. Obviously it depends on like how their movie ends up playing out and whatnot, but obviously they've probably been kicking it in the MCU for a while. We just weren't aware of their existence being there. And he was like, oh, it's kind of, it's that thing of like, oh, these powerful beings that's going to step in every once in a while over the course of the MCU, but it's like even something like Infinity War and Endgame wasn't enough to get them brought into this whole situation, because there's gonna have to be something that's justified, like why they weren't there. Just like, Captain Marvel's thing of like why she wasn't there most of Endgame, why she's kind of been away for the past like 20 plus years. So it's kind of a similar thing in that vein. But he was like, Kyle was like, oh yeah, well, like maybe like, half of them got wiped out. So you think that would have been enough to kind of instigate them kind of getting, taking place in it. And then in that moment I start thinking, well, was half of them wiped out? Because a question that's kind of rolled around my mind, it's something I think I've kind of talked about a little bit before, maybe not. Maybe I'm just giving myself too much credit. But the whole conversation is, how powerful are the Infinity Stones? Like in the grand scheme of things of like the snap. Obviously it was powerful enough to literally wipe out half of the universe. But then comes the question of like, well, obviously we know there's exceptions to how powerful and how far it reaches, because it wasn't able to reach Scott Ant-Man inside of the quantum realm. But then the whole thing is, the justification for that could be, is it like, well, because the quantum realm counts as its own universe, and when Thanos was snapping, he was only focused on this particular universe because it's the universe he knows. Maybe he doesn't really know if other universes exist. But then another part of my brain was thinking like, or is it just because the quantum realm is protected? Like, is it just like the snap bounced off of it? So my mind kind of bounces in those two areas, because the thought I had too was like, well, what about Carol? Is Carol, like, was she just fortunate not to get snapped, or is she powerful enough that the snap didn't affect her? Like, we don't know how it scales against powerful beings. You would assume like it affect anything in the universe, but that begs the question, does it really? Because even taking, because part of me was also thinking like, well, Carol's powers come from an Infinity Stone, so do Vision's. But to be fair, at the time of the snap, Vision was already dead, the stone was already removed from him, so it's a different circumstance. But still, because I haven't rewatched Infinity War yet, but I'm curious, like, maybe, because didn't he get disintegrated along with Scarlet Witch, or did his body stay there? I don't remember. Even though he was dead, I think his body still disintegrated, didn't it? Like I said, I feel like it did, but I could be wrong. But nevertheless, my point is, like, if he had, the Infinity Stone, like, and the snap happened, would he be affected by it? Like, does the, like, stone's powers give someone enough? But then again, it's like, well, Carol doesn't carry around the stone that gave her powers, but you still get what I'm saying? So I guess it is just a situation of she would just happen to be luckily not one of the people snap. But that brings up, the Eternals, because the Eternals are on that same level. I mean, to be fair, like, the Celestials created the Eternals, so there's like a hierarchy to this whole situation. But part of me wonders, like, what about Celestials? Like, if Ego was around, like if No More was actually alive, would it have been affected by the snap? Would either one of them have been affected? To be fair, there's all this whole thing that I've heard interesting conversations where it's like, actually, Ego might not be a Celestial. He might have been running around calling himself one, but he might not have necessarily been one. So it's kind of interesting to think, like, maybe the Eternals are so old and so powerful that even a snap wouldn't even affect them that. Or maybe they're lucky enough to be like, oh wow, all this crap that's happening on Earth, half of the population is going, it's like, oh man, like, we weren't affected by it at all. Were they just lucky? Were some of them affected? I'm curious about stuff like that. It kind of, because I think that'd be such an interesting thing if they weren't affected by it, because that shows you, like, because that brings up the question too of like, well, why wouldn't they get involved? Like, because it isn't just at that point, it's not even just a human issue, it's a galaxy issue. Once again, it's like the whole thing about like Captain Marvel, like the reason why she didn't take part in a lot of things is because, like, well, I've been out in space dealing with all of that. Like, I don't just have Earth to look after. I literally have to look after an entire galaxy. I'm here to kind of keep the balance, keep the peace. Well, I don't have to look after Earth because I know Earth has the Avengers. No other planet out there in the galaxy has their own Avengers. So, Earth is good because you're looking after it. Are the Eternals being like, oh yeah, those Avenger kids, they got it. Those youngins, they got it. We don't have to get involved, because their thing might be more so, watching rather than participating. It's just kind of like, oh, I'm curious to actually see how they handle it. Maybe the events of Endgame is actually going to make them go like, yo, maybe it's going to make them realize, like, maybe we need to step out of the shadows every once in a while, because like that was a dicey situation. Hell, for all we know, maybe most of the Eternals got wiped out. Maybe there was only one left. I mean, since I'm making the comparison of like the snap in itself, like I am curious, like how would the Eternals fare up against the Infinity Stones? Because even like Captain Marvel struggled, like, you know, Thanos got in a good hit with like the Power Stone, so showing that like obviously like she can hold her own against Thanos on his own. It's still kind of like a balanced fight, but him using the Power Stone was enough to kind of knock her back and kind of get her off of him long enough to kind of do what he needs to do with the gauntlet and whatnot. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing in itself, even as powerful as she is. But to be fair, the Eternals are probably on a way higher level than Captain Marvel. I mean, that even begs the question, like, how does she fare against him? Like I said, because of the way Thanos is, which even like the continuity and stuff of like the comic books and stuff like that, and what I've heard people talk about the Eternals a little bit, it's known for a lot of people, is that Thanos is connected to the Eternals, because there's the whole thing of like the Eternals and the Deviants, that whole thing. So at the very least, they're on the same power level as like Thanos and Captain Marvel. At the bare minimum, I would assume they're even higher, but still. That in itself is actually kind of like I said, this whole thing is an interesting conversation, because like Scott's the only one we know for sure wasn't affected by the snap because him being in the quantum realm. I mean, we've all made that assumption that that's what protected him, but I mean, who knows? But that begs the question, what else in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that maybe we're not aware of yet that wasn't affected by the snap? I mean, like I said, going back to that, like, is there anything that wasn't affected by the snap, or was everyone affected? Because I think that would speak volumes on just how powerful the stones are. If like I said, even something as powerful as like, you know, a Celestial or the Eternals could be taken out by even Captain Marvel. Like I said, I'm interested to see if they really dive into that or not. Once again, like I said, it depends on how they handle the whole Eternals movie and whether that's something they really dive into. I would think it'd be interesting, especially considering how important, you know, the snap is to that universe, you know? So I don't know. These are just some things that were kind of float in the back of my mind. Like I said, it was just something that kind of sparked that conversation. Like, oh yeah, like who wouldn't be affected by the snap and all that? So like I said, these are just like my thoughts and theories. In the comments down below, I'd love to get to know yours. Like, what do you think about what I say? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you actually know? Just let me know all your thoughts and how you're feeling in the comments down below. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.